The moment I walked into the hospital's main conference room and saw the old man from the bus station sitting at the head of the long oak table, 4 silver stars gleaming on the shoulder boards of his Navy service dress blues, I genuinely believed my legs were about to give out from under me. He looked up at me with the same quiet, steady eyes I remembered from that rainy Tuesday night 3 weeks earlier, and he gave me the smallest nod. Like he'd been expecting me. Like he'd been waiting. My name is Megan Holloway. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a registered nurse at the Hampton Roads Veterans Medical Center in Virginia. Before that, I served 4 years in the Navy as a hospital corpsman, second class, until a back injury during a training exercise ended my career a little earlier than I'd planned. I still wear the Navy on my skin in ways you can't really see. The way I fold my towels. The way I make my bed. The way I still say A instead of yes when someone gives me instructions at work, and how my charge nurse sometimes teases me for it. I want to tell you about the night I paid a stranger's bus fare, and about what happened when that stranger turned out to be one of the most powerful men in the United States Navy. But mostly I want to tell you about what it felt like to be a nobody, standing in a room full of somebodies, and to realize that the quietest man in the room was the one who had all the power. It was the second week of October, and it had been raining for 3 days straight. Not the kind of rain that cleans things. The kind that just makes everything feel soggy and tired. I had worked a double that day, covering for a coworker whose kid had the flu, and by the time I clocked out at 9:30 at night, I was running on cafeteria coffee and the last crumbs of a granola bar I'd stashed in my locker that morning. My little Honda had been in the shop for a week waiting on a transmission part that kept getting delayed, so I'd been taking the HRT bus from the hospital back to my apartment in Norfolk. It wasn't ideal. The last bus of the night left the stop near the medical center at 9:45, and if you missed it, you were looking at a $30 rideshare or a very long walk. I made it to the shelter with about 4 minutes to spare, my scrubs damp under my rain jacket, my feet screaming inside shoes that had seen better days. That's when I noticed the old man. He was sitting on the metal bench inside the shelter, hunched forward, his hands resting on the handle of a collapsible cane. He wore a faded canvas jacket over a flannel shirt, and a navy blue ball cap with gold embroidery that read USS Saratoga CV-60. The bill of the cap was so worn at the edges that the fabric was starting to fray. He had the kind of weathered face you see on men who spent their lives outdoors or at sea, deep creases around the eyes, a close-trimmed white mustache, skin tanned to the color of old saddle leather. His hands shook just a little, not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. There was a younger man at the shelter too, maybe my age, leaning against the pole with earbuds in, scrolling on his phone. He didn't look up. When the bus pulled up, the doors wheezed open and a gust of warm air hit us. I stepped aside to let the old man go first. He nodded his thanks and climbed up the steps slowly, one hand on the rail, the other on his cane. I heard the coin slot click a few times, and then I heard the driver say something in a tone that made my shoulders tense before I even understood the words. "Sir, that's only 90 cents. Fare's $1.75. The old man patted his jacket pockets. Once. Twice. Slowly, the way people do when they already know the answer and just can't believe it. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was soft, raspy at the edges, the voice of someone who didn't speak much anymore. "I thought I had more. I must have left my wallet at the VA this morning. I can't let you ride for 90 cents, sir. You'll have to step off." "I understand." He started to turn around, and I saw his face for the first time in the fluorescent light of the bus, and I'll tell you something. I've seen a lot of faces at the VA. I've seen men twice his size cry silently during a dressing change. I've held the hands of Marines who survived things I'll never imagine, and watched them tremble at the sound of a dropped tray. But the look on that old man's face in that moment, the way he tried so hard not to let any of it show, the way he straightened his shoulders as he turned to step back off into the rain. That was the thing that broke me. "Hold on," I said, and I stepped up behind him and tapped my card on the reader. "He's with me. I've got his fare." The driver shrugged and nodded. The old man turned to look at me, and for a second I thought he was going to protest. Instead, he just said, "That's very kind of you, miss. I'll pay you back. If you'll give me your address, I can send you a check tomorrow." "Please don't worry about it," I told him. "It's just a couple of bucks. Go sit down, you're soaking wet." He hesitated, and then he did as I said. He took a seat near the front, both hands on his cane, and he looked out the window for a long time, not saying anything. I sat 2 rows back. The bus groaned forward. The windshield wipers thumped. We passed the gates of the naval station, where I used to badge in every morning back in my old life, and I watched the old man's head turn as we drove by. He watched the gate the way some people watch a photograph of someone they used to know. When the bus reached my stop, I stood up and walked to the front. But something, I don't know what, made me pause next to a seat. "Sir," I said, "where are you getting off?" He named a stop about 12 blocks north of mine. I knew the area. Not a great neighborhood for a man his age to be walking alone in this weather at 10 at night. "That's pretty far," I said, "and it's really coming down out there. Do you have someone meeting you?" "I'll be all right, sir. I grew up around here. Please, just let me walk you from the stop to wherever you're going. I won't sleep if I don't." He looked at me for a long moment. There was something in his eyes I didn't understand then. It looked almost like he was studying me for a test I didn't know I was taking. "Well," he said finally, "if you insist." So I rode past my stop. We got off together at his, and I held my umbrella over his head as we walked, and he pointed out a small brick house 4 blocks up a quiet street. There was a porch light on, glowing warm and yellow through the rain. "My daughter lives here," he said. "I was supposed to have dinner with her tonight. I took the wrong bus on the way home and I've been going in circles since about 6. Does she know you're all right? She worries." I waited while he climbed the 3 steps to the porch. Before he knocked on the door, he turned back and looked at me, and I saw his eyes were wet. "What's your name, miss?" "Megan Holloway." "Megan Holloway," he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I won't forget what you did tonight. It was a bus fare, sir, and a walk in the rain. Please, it's nothing." "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't nothing." The door opened. A woman in her 50s gasped and pulled him inside, scolding and crying at the same time, and I turned and walked back into the rain before I could hear what she said. I didn't know his name. I never asked. It didn't feel like the kind of moment that required names. I walked the 12 blocks back to my apartment, and I got my door soaked to the skin at almost 11 o'clock at night, and I made myself a cup of tea, and I sat on my couch and I cried a little. And I didn't really know why. The next morning I went back to work. The morning after that, I went back to work. Life went on. The transmission part for my Honda came in. I forgot mostly about the old man, not in a cold way, just in the way that small moments get folded into the general quiet of your life. Then, 3 weeks later, my charge nurse stopped me in the hallway outside Ward C. "Megan, Dr. Alston needs you in the main conference room at 2 o'clock. "Me? Why?" "She didn't say. Just said to send you up. Wear a clean badge." Dr. Alston was the director of the medical center. She was a retired Navy captain, a formidable woman in her early 60s who ran the hospital like a flag bridge, and I had maybe said 4 sentences to her the entire 2 years I'd worked there. You did not get summoned to Dr. Alston's office for minor things. You got summoned for commendations or terminations, and I wasn't aware of having earned either. My stomach twisted into a knot and stayed that way through my lunch break, which I didn't eat. I went to the staff bathroom and checked my scrubs for stains. I smoothed my hair. I washed my face. I told myself whatever this was, I would handle it. At 1:55, I walked up to the 5th floor, and I approached the conference room, and I knocked on the heavy wooden door. "Come." I stepped in. And there he was, the old man from the bus, sitting at the head of the long oak conference table. But he wasn't wearing a canvas jacket and a faded ball cap. He was wearing navy service dress blues, the jacket buttoned, the creases sharp enough to cut paper. On each shoulder board gleamed 4 silver stars, arranged in a perfect diamond. 4 stars. An admiral. And not just any admiral. And not just any admiral. Because next to him sat Dr. Alston. and across from her sat two officers in uniform I didn't recognize, and the aide standing behind his chair wore the rank of a Navy commander and carried the bearing of a man who had seen things. And on the table in front of the old man was a leather portfolio stamped with the seal of the Department of Veterans Affairs, and below the seal, in small gold letters, it read, Admiral Edward J. W.H. Mann, USN, Ret. Chairman, National Veterans, Healthcare, A Divisory Board. I stopped moving. For a second, I genuinely couldn't remember how to breathe. I stood in that doorway with my mouth slightly open, and I looked from the Admiral to Dr. Alston to the other officers and back to the Admiral, and the Admiral, the old man I had walked through the rain, looked up at me with those same quiet eyes and gave me a small, kind nod. Petty Officer Holloway, he said softly, I'm glad you could join us. Please, come in. Have a seat. I don't remember walking to the chair. I don't remember sitting down. I remember Dr. Alston's face, pale and carefully neutral. I remember one of the officers watching me with a curiosity he wasn't bothering to hide. Admiral, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. Sir, I didn't know. I know you didn't, he said. That's rather the point. Dr. Alston cleared her throat. Megan, Admiral Whitman is here as part of a quarterly review of facilities that fall under VA healthcare oversight. He's the chairman of the board that, among other things, determines where federal funding is allocated and how patient care standards are evaluated across the Veterans Health Administration nationwide. I nodded. I couldn't speak. The Admiral requested this meeting specifically. He asked me to bring you in. My heart was in my throat. I didn't know what I had done. Was this about the bus? Was he going to tell everyone what had happened? Had I done something wrong, maybe, by insisting on walking him home? Had that been inappropriate? The Admiral opened the leather portfolio in front of him. He slid out a single sheet of paper. He placed it carefully on the table. Before we get into why I'm here, he said, I have to ask you something. Do you remember me, Petty Officer Holloway? Yes, sir. Tell me where we met. I swallowed. On a bus. 3 weeks ago. Tuesday night. It was raining. Tell everyone in this room what happened. My hands were shaking now. I pressed them flat against my thighs under the table. Admiral, I don't think that's please. So I told them. I told them about the 90 cents, about how I tapped my card, about walking him to his daughter's house. I left out the part about crying on my couch when I got home. I kept it short. When I was done, the Admiral nodded once, and he turned to Dr. Alston. Captain Alston, I would like to read you something. With your permission, and Petty Officer Holloway's. Dr. Alston nodded. He picked up the sheet of paper and he began to read. It was an incident report. My incident report. Filed 2 weeks earlier by a shift supervisor named Richard Kessler, detailing what he described as my pattern of insubordination and deviation from protocol, citing 3 specific incidents, all of them framed in a way that was technically accurate and emotionally dishonest. One of them was about the night I'd stayed 40 minutes after my shift to sit with a Vietnam veteran who had woken up disoriented and scared because his family hadn't been able to reach the hospital in time. Kessler had written it up as unauthorized overtime and inappropriate patient contact. I hadn't known about the report. I hadn't known it existed. My face got hot while the Admiral read. I stared at the table. When he was done, he set the paper down. Captain, he said, can you tell me where this report was filed? In Petty Officer Holloway's personnel file, Admiral. And what was the recommended outcome? Termination pending review? And when was the review scheduled? This Friday. I see. The room was very quiet. I could hear someone's watch ticking. I could hear my own blood in my ears. I still did not look up. Captain Alston, I'd like to ask you. Are you familiar with Richard Kessler? Yes, Admiral. He has worked at this facility for 11 years. And are you aware that, in the past 4 years, Mr. Kessler has filed 17 similar reports against staff members who report to him? All of them women, all of them under 35, and all of them, I'm told, of ethnic minority background. Did you know that, Captain? Dr. Alston's face changed, only a little. But I saw it. I was not aware of the exact numbers, Admiral. I thought not. Because if you had been, I suspect you would already have acted. The data came out of our civil rights review this morning. It's part of why I'm here. He turned back to me. Petty Officer Holloway, look at me, please. I lifted my eyes. 3 weeks ago, I let myself get into a situation that a man my age should have known better than to get into. My daughter had given me cash for the bus, and I put it down somewhere at the VA and I couldn't find it. I was tired and I was ashamed, and I walked to a bus stop in the rain, and I thought to myself, well, I'll figure something out. An Admiral of the Navy, stranded at a bus stop, not wanting to call anyone because he didn't want to be a bother. That's the kind of thing that happens when a man outlives his usefulness and forgets how to ask for help. Sir, you didn't outlive. Let me finish, please. Yes, sir. You tapped your card without looking at me like I was a problem. You didn't ask me my name. You didn't ask what I did or where I'd served. You didn't ask if I could pay you back. You walked me 12 blocks in the rain because I looked lost, and when my daughter opened the door, you turned around and walked away before she could even see your face. Do you understand what you gave me that night? I shook my head, because I didn't. I really didn't. You gave me back something I had been missing. You reminded me that the country I spent 41 years serving still has people in it who will stop for an old man in the rain and not expect anything in return. Not a thank you, not a name, not a photograph, nothing. You reminded me, Petty Officer Holloway, why I wore this uniform. I couldn't see anymore. Everything had gone blurry. When I got home that night, I asked my daughter to help me find out who you were. I had your name, and I remembered you said you were a corpsman. It didn't take long. And when I found out you worked here and I saw what was in your file, well, he looked at Dr. Alston. I don't enjoy what comes next, Captain, but I'm afraid it's necessary. Dr. Alston nodded once crisply. Aye, Admiral. Richard Kessler is to be removed from any supervisory role pending a full internal investigation, which I will be personally monitoring through the Inspector General's office. The incident report filed against Petty Officer Holloway is to be expunged from her record, effective immediately. Every other report filed by Mr. Kessler in the past 5 years is to be independently re-reviewed by a panel that does not include him or anyone who reports to him. And I want a preliminary finding on my desk in 30 days. Yes, Admiral. Furthermore, he turned back to me. The board I chair administers a program that, among other things, provides full-ride scholarships for veterans pursuing advanced degrees in military medicine. It's named after a corpsman who was killed at Kaysan in 1968. A friend of mine. His name was Daniel Rourke, and he was 20 years old, and he was the best human being I have ever known. And I think he would have liked you very much, Petty Officer Holloway. Admiral, I can't. The application is open. I would like you to apply. I can't guarantee you'll receive it. That decision belongs to a selection committee that I don't sit on. But I think you stand a very good chance. Will you apply? I nodded. I couldn't speak. Good. He closed the portfolio. One more thing. And this is personal, not official. He reached into the inside pocket of his uniform jacket and he took out an envelope. He slid it across the table toward me. This is a thank you card from my daughter, Sarah. She asked me to give it to you if I ever found out who you were. I think she's been hoping I would. I took it. My hand was shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Thank you, sir. No, Petty Officer Holloway, thank you. He stood. Everyone else stood with him. I stood too, and without really thinking about it, I came to attention. He looked at me with those quiet, steady eyes, and something flickered across his face that was not quite a smile. It was something older and deeper than a smile. And he raised his right hand, and he returned the salute he had not been owed, and that I had not known I was giving him, and he held it there for a long moment before dropping it. Dismissed, sailor. Aye, sir. I walked out of that conference room on legs I couldn't feel. I made it to the stairwell before I leaned against the wall and put my hands over my face and just stood there for a minute, not crying exactly, just trying to let the world come back into focus. That was 6 months ago. Richard Kessler was terminated following the investigation. The panel reviewed all 17 reports and 13 of them were found to have been filed in bad faith. 2 of the women he'd gotten fired were offered reinstatement. One of them, a young woman named Aaliyah, came back, and she and I eat lunch together in the courtyard on Thursdays now. I was awarded the Rourke Scholarship in February. I start my master's program in military and veteran health policy at the Uniformed Services University this fall. Dr. Alston wrote my recommendation letter herself. She also, quietly, one afternoon in her office, apologized to me for not having seen what had been happening under her own roof. I told her I didn't blame her. I think she knew I meant it. Admiral Whitman and I exchange Christmas cards now. His daughter Sarah and I have become something like friends. Last month I drove up to Richmond on my day off, and the 3 of us had lunch at a little diner near the river. The Admiral wore a canvas jacket and a USS Saratoga ball cap. He sat with his hands folded on top of his cane and he listened to Sarah tell a story about her son's school play. He didn't say much. He rarely does. At one point, he caught my eye across the table and he gave me that same small nod he had given me in the conference room. And I want to tell you something, you who are watching this, you who have served or who love someone who served or who have ever doubted that the quiet, small things matter. Because I've thought a lot about that night in the rain over these last 6 months. The Admiral told me in the conference room that I gave him something, and he wasn't wrong. But what I didn't understand until much later was that he gave me something too. He gave me back the reason I put on scrubs every morning. Because for a little while before that night, before all of it, I had started to wonder if any of it mattered. The long hours. The small acts of care that no one ever sees. Sitting with a frightened old man for 40 minutes after a shift when no one asked you to. It turns out, it all matters. It turns out the smallest thing you do, in the worst weather, on the worst day, for the person no one else is looking at, might turn out to be the thing that matters most. You never know who's on the bus with you. You never know whose fare you're paying. And you never ever know who's going to walk into your conference room 3 weeks later wearing 4 stars on his shoulders and call you by name. So pay the fare, walk the 12 blocks, hold the umbrella. You'd be surprised who notices. And you'd be even more surprised how much it costs them to forget